Hello and welcome to the Locked On Red Sox podcast. I am your host, NESN's Lauren Campbell. Thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every day. We have a lot of show to get to today. We're going to talk about Alex Cora if he was snubbed for Manager of the Year. We're going to talk a little bit about Justin Verlander and answer some of your questions, so be sure to stay tuned.
Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to our very first YouTube show. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for listening to Locked On Red Sox. Today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. So let's just jump right into this here. Alex Cora was not named one of the Manager of the Year finalists, and I 100% believe that he was snubbed. I think that, no offense to Dusty Baker, I love what he's done. I have tremendous respect for him. However, the Astros were supposed to be good. Everyone knew going into the season that the Astros were going to be a problem. They were going to be a good team, they were going to be a tough team, and they were going to be a playoff-bound team. The Red Sox were not going to be any of that this season. Before the season even began, so many experts, analysts, even some of my friends and my coworkers, they also wrote the Red Sox off. They were like, they're not going to be a postseason team. There's no way this team is going to do anything more than 70 wins. Joke's on you guys, because the Red Sox made it to the ALCS. Now, listen, I know that the postseason has nothing to do with these nominations, with who is named a finalist. But going back to what I was saying, the Red Sox, they were not going to be competitive this year. This was supposed to be a bridge year, just kind of get through it, coast through it, and be competitive in 2022. So now that it's 2021, the Red Sox were 2 wins away from the World Series. They got rid of the Yankees. They knocked them out of the postseason. They dismantled the Rays, got them out of the postseason, and went on to the ALCS. They won 90 games. They weren't supposed to do that either. And they all did that under Alex Cora. So I was definitely a little miffed knowing that he wasn't named a finalist. And again, nothing against Dusty Baker. Tremendous respect for him. I think that he's an incredible baseball mind, a great manager, and he's got a ton of respect from his players and other coaches around the league. But when you look at what Alex Cora did, he was a year removed, or he was removed from a 1-year suspension by MLB for his role in the sign stealing scandal with the Astros in 2017. You look at what he did for the Red Sox. He took a team that, again, was not supposed to be competitive, that was not supposed to make the postseason, and he did a lot for this team. He did a lot with the roster he was given. There were times when a lot of people were questioning this roster. Do they have enough pitching depth? How is this bullpen going to hold up? And he made this team really competitive. This team was in first place in the AL East for over 80 days, and he still made them competitive even through a COVID outbreak toward the end of the season. So Alex Cora did so much with not a whole lot, and I'm not trying to disrespect the team by any means with the Xander Bogaerts, the Rafael Devers, JD Martinez, Nate Eovaldi, but those guys were supposed to be good. And then you look at the bullpen, which was actually pretty good for at the beginning of the year. It was really kind of a steady aspect to this team for a little while, but there were so many questions surrounding it, especially after Matt Barnes began to struggle after the All-Star break. He just did not look the same. He looked unhittable in the first half of the season, and then just could not find his groove anymore. He was left off postseason rosters, added to postseason rosters because of injuries. It's just not a good look for Matt Barnes anymore. But despite having your closer melt down at the end of the season, despite your team having a COVID-19 outbreak toward the end of the season, and not just a COVID-19 outbreak that took out Ryan Brazier or a name like that, this took out Xander Bogaerts. This team, and they would call the players up from AAA Worcester, and then those players would get COVID. So it was just a vicious cycle of COVID. Even though they fell out of first place at that time, he still kept them hanging around, and they still were a playoff team. So to see him kind of get snubbed, like I said, I was definitely a little miffed. There's always next year, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But when you take a team that was written off before the season even began, like I said, many experts didn't even have them making the postseason, didn't even have them getting 80 wins, and Alex Cora did so much more than that. I said at the beginning of the season in our early season predictions for NESN that Alex Cora really was going to be an X factor to this team. I decided not to pick a player. I picked Alex Cora because you saw in 2018 and 2019 how much these players loved and respected and responded to Cora. They really could communicate with him. He's a player's manager. He really hears them out. So when he came back, of course, I'm going to think that this team is going to be competitive because they love Alex Cora. They respond to him. They really listen to him, and he has their attention in the clubhouse. So I was really convinced this team was going to be competitive. I definitely thought this team was going to be a wild card team only. I did not think they were going to get to the ALDS. I certainly did not think they were going to get to the ALCS. So I was pleasantly surprised. So in my mind, before these awards were even announced, the finalists were announced, I was like, Alex Cora definitely is a lock for Manager of the Year. There's just no way that he can't be named a finalist because he took so much. He brought this team from an abysmal 2020. Yes, it was a shortened 60-game season, but you take that team and you spin it around and you don't have any of your star players. You don't start the season with Chris Sale. You don't start the season with Erod. He missed his first start with fatigue and dead arm. And a team that was only supposed to win 70 games, a team that wasn't supposed to make the playoffs, won 90 games. They went to the postseason, and Alex Cora gets snubbed. So definitely a little salty, and not that the others certainly were not deserving of it. Like I said, that everyone who was nominated certainly deserves it. But I do think Dusty Baker, you knew the Astros were going to be a good team. You knew they were going to be competitive. Yes, they dealt with their own issues throughout the season, but they were still going to be a good team. The Red Sox weren't supposed to make the playoffs, but enough of that. I'll get off my high horse because it's just going to make me a little more miffed every time we continue to talk about it. Because we have the off season to look forward to, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very interesting because there's still a lot of unknown. We don't know if there's going to be a work stoppage. We don't know if there's going to be a universal DH. We really don't know how the free agent market is going to look for pitchers, position players. It's going to be really, really fun to see what kind of contracts players get. And one of those players in particular is Justin Verlander. Now, Verlander is coming off Tommy John surgery. He did not pitch at all last season. And he hosted a workout earlier this week for, I believe it was 16 teams were in attendance, the Red Sox being one of them. And he threw upwards of 96 miles an hour. And that's incredibly promising. It's definitely reassuring for anybody who's trying to add pitching depth to their roster. And who doesn't want to go out and scout Justin Verlander and see what he's got? It's Justin Verlander. You probably want him on your team if you can take a flyer on him, right? Like, why not? He's so accomplished. He's done so much in his career. And he's going to continue to do it. Before his Tommy John surgery, this guy was aging like fine wine, and hopefully that continues to be the case. So he is a free agent going into this offseason. The Astros did, however, extend him a qualifying offer. In my mind, I think he'd be wise to accept it. I think that with all the uncertainty surrounding the league next year, the market, and maybe you don't want to put too much of a risk on yourself because who knows if you're going to go out there and make more than $18.4 million on the open market. Yes, it's Justin Verlander. Yes, he's worth more than that. He's worth a lot of money. There's no denying that. But with all the uncertainty, I think he'd be wise to accept it. I think that he should remain with the Astros. It's a team that he's familiar with and kind of make this a prove-it year and maybe get one more 1 or 2 year contract, whether that's with the Astros or elsewhere. Now, he's going to be 39, so he's not a spring chicken. He's not, even Chris Sale, who's in his early 30s. So age certainly is not on his side, but his momentum is, his numbers and his stats are, and he's just a household name. Justin Verlander, again, who doesn't want him on your team? And as intriguing as he is, as amazing a pitcher as he is, his resume is incredible. I think the Red Sox would be wise to stay away from him. They have their own problems to work out. They have to figure out if Erod is going to accept or deny his qualifying offer that was tendered to him earlier this week. And for me, like I said, Justin Verlander is incredible. He's a Cy Young Award winner. He's a multiple Cy Young Award winner. He's a World Series champion. He's an all-star. He's incredibly accomplished. There's no denying what he's done on that mound. But for me, To have more uncertainty in that pitching rotation is not something I want to take more of a risk on going into the season. You're hoping Chris Sale bounces back from his down year. You're hoping that a full off season and just being around the team more and ramping up for a 2022 season, a full 2022 season is going to benefit him. You hope Nate Eovaldi is going to mirror what he did last season for the Red Sox. He was absolutely nails. And if Erod does accept his qualifying offer, you hope he kind of returns to 2019 form, or at least gives you more stability, maybe 13, 14 wins, not as so much up and down like he was last year. But of course, having Chris Sale, Nate Eovaldi, Erod, and Justin Verlander in your rotation, are you kidding me? That's insane. Of course, I would love that. But there's too many question marks right there. And like I said, age is not on Justin Verlander's side. There's so many questions going into next season. And I really think it would be wise for the Red Sox to just steer clear, figure out your own problems, bolster that bullpen, bring in another starter. But right now, their hands are kind of tied with Erod's decision. He does have until November 17th at 5 p.m. So what do we have there? A couple more days. Of course, my watch isn't going to work right now. So we have I can't do math. 8 days. 8 days until he decides whether he wants to accept or reject the qualifying offer. He can obviously decide before then. My mind tells me he'll accept it because it's $18.4 million. Erod had an average season. He did really struggle toward the end, but he did bounce back in the postseason. However, I am going to reiterate that there could be a work stoppage. Who knows what this offseason free agent market is going to look like money-wise, competitive-wise. It would just be smart for Erod to accept it. And with JD deciding to not opt out of his contract and instead continue his career with the Red Sox for next season at $19.35 million, the Red Sox spending money gets a little lower and lower. So as much as I love Justin Verlander, as much as I respect Justin Verlander, as much as I draft Justin Verlander in my fantasy baseball leagues, there's too many question marks. The Red Sox already have someone coming off of Tommy John surgery. You need to get Chris Sale a full season in there. You do not want to take on another potential problem in Justin Verlander. You don't want to take on the uncertainties surrounding him. Maybe I'll eat my words when he returns to Houston, or if he returns to Houston, assuming he accepts the qualifying offer when he starts the season like 9-0 with a 2 ERA. But we are not fortune tellers here. I'm just giving my opinion and why I think the Red Sox should steer clear of Justin Verlander. I'm sure I'm going to be regretting that when the Red Sox and the Astros meet in the ALCS again next year, and Justin Verlander squaring off against Chris Sale, and it's a 6-hour pitcher's duel. But coming up in our second segment of Locked On Red Sox, I'm going to answer some questions that came in on my personal Twitter and the Locked On Red Sox Twitter account. So be sure to stick around for that. But first, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now nearly impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse just so happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com right at home and right in your pocket. Rock Auto is a family business and it's been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every single customer that they have. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Make sure you write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us section so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Red Sox podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every day. And thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel now. We are finally up on YouTube. Thank you so much for waiting for us, for your patience. We are happy to be here, so bear with us as we try to work out any kinks along the way. So I'm going to answer some of the questions, like I said, that came in from my Twitter account as well as the Locked On Red Sox Twitter account. And the first one came from Jonathan. He asked me if I think Garrett Whitlock becomes a starter or stays in the bullpen, maybe as Barnes' successor as a closer. What will be their starting rotation? So I love this question because the Garrett Whitlock conversation is something I talk to my fiance about almost every day. We have this conversation going back and forth because he really wants Garrett Whitlock as a starter. And I'm not opposed to that at all. I do think that Garrett Whitlock would thrive as a starter. However, last season was his first season pitching above the AA level. I think he needs a little more stretching out. I think he needs a little more confidence behind him. I'd love to see him maybe kind of mold himself into a starter. And I know that doesn't always work out. You think of Daniel Bard, you think of Nate Eovaldi, that going from starter to bullpen, and even Tanner Houck, it's really difficult at times. And Chaim Bloom said on Tuesday at the GM's meetings that he's considering Whitlock as a possibility for a starter, as well as Houck. So that's really interesting there. Personally, for me, I would love to see Garrett Whitlock as the closer. And I know Matt Barnes signed the extension last year in July. I know that he dominated in the first half of the season. However, if you can make Matt Barnes a pretty decent setup guy for Garrett Whitlock, who showcased a ton of potential as a closer, I think that'd be a pretty dominant setup there. Pretty kind of 1-2 punch right there with Garrett Whitlock and Matt Barnes. I think Matt Barnes is just a matter of him getting right. I don't think that it's anything to really worry about. I think he's just, mentally in his own head and just needs to kind of figure it out and get back on track. And if he can do that, if he can give the Red Sox, 1 or 2 innings in the 7th and 8th and set up Garrett Whitlock, that could be potentially pretty lethal. As for their starting rotation, a lot relies on Erod and where he goes. So let's just play the game that Erod opted in or accepted the qualifying offer. I think it goes Eovaldi, Chris Sale, Erod, Tanner Houck, and TBD. So I don't know. I doubt the Red Sox will go with an opener like the Rays have done the past few seasons. It really sounds like Alex Cora is really not too keen on that idea. I think Eovaldi did so much last season for the Red Sox. I think he was nails for most of the season that he really earned the number 1 spot for next year. Now, obviously, that's going to depend on spring training and how Sale and Eovaldi, how they kind of figure it out in spring training and how they do. Nothing is guaranteed. And if Erod comes back, I think he'll be the 3rd starter. And I think they're going to really try to get Tanner Houck figured out as a starter. He has mentioned several times that he doesn't want to go to the bullpen because it'd be the easy way out for him. He just really needs to focus on developing that 3rd pitch, getting through the lineup a 3rd time, and just attacking the plate. Because we've seen it several times last season that he had a lot of trouble through the 3rd time around in that rotation. So I think he has a lot of work to do this offseason, but I do think at the end of the day, he does crack the starting rotation. But that number 5 spot could be very tricky, especially because the Red Sox declined options on Martin Perez and Garrett Richards. Now, even if they do bring back either one of them, which I don't think they will, and if they were, I think it would be Garrett Richards over Martin Perez any day. I think Garrett Richards would go to the bullpen. I think he showcased a lot more as a reliever than a starter. So that 5th spot really is up for grabs. It certainly will be very interesting to see how they handle their pitching, if they really just kind of either put Houck and Whitlock back in the bullpen. Maybe they make them both starters. I don't know, but I would love to see Whitlock as the closer. Eovaldi, Sale, Erod, Houck, and then TBD. Our next question comes from Jake, and he says, do you see Kyle from Waltham coming back? I'm so sorry, Jake. I unfortunately do not. I think with JD Martinez deciding to not opt out of the final year of his contract, I think that makes it much more difficult for the Red Sox to figure out where to put him in the lineup, where to put him in the field. Chaim Bloom seemed very happy with Tristan Cassis and Bobby Dahlbeck at first base. You don't really want to mess with the outfield. I loved Kyle Schwarber while he was here. He brought so much fun and excitement to this team, especially for someone who a lot of Red Sox fans were like, where are we going to put him? Like, where does he go? Well, why are you going to put an injured outfielder playing first base, a position he's never played before? We did that with Christian Arroyo, and he nearly ripped his groin clean off. So his story was fun, like I said, because a lot of fans weren't very excited that he was here. I loved the trade. I was kind of in that same boat, though, where I was like, well, where does he go? I don't really understand. Like, don't mess up the outfield. But because JD does provide a little bit of versatility, obviously the money too, I think that Kyle Schwarber, he's 28. This is his last kind of opportunity at a big contract. So I think, unfortunately, this kind of closes the door on Schwarber's time here in Boston. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't foresee the Red Sox signing somebody that they don't really need when they have a ton of areas of need right now. And our final question comes from Twitter user BostonJMD. I don't know if he uses his real name on Twitter. And I know him in real life. We talk about the challenge all the time. So I do not want to put his personal name out there if he does not want to use it on Twitter. But he asked if, with JD not opting out and the logjam at first base, third base, and DH between Devers, JD, Dahlbeck, Cassis, do you see the Sox making a deal to help other areas of need? If they don't, that's going to be a big problem because their biggest area of need right now is pitching. If they don't make a move for pitching, that's a big problem because they have a lot to address at the pitching position. And like I said earlier, I know a lot of this depends on what Erod decides to do and how they will go about either trying to replace him or adding depth behind him in a starting rotation in the bullpen. But I think they are pretty content with their infield. Obviously, the DH is not a problem now. You have Cassius coming up. He's probably another year, maybe 2 away. But the Red Sox really need to buckle down and zero in on pitching. We've seen this for the last few years now. Pitching wins you games at the end of the day, and the Red Sox lost so many winnable games last year, especially to the Astros in the postseason. They could have easily won those games had they just had a reliable reliever, or if the starter could have gone maybe one more extra inning. It's really not too much on the starters throughout the postseason. The bullpen, tails all the time, really couldn't hold on to a lead. So their biggest area in need is obviously pitching, and I think that they're going to work very hard to address those offseason needs, especially with how much they exceeded expectations last year. I think that they saw that as like, oh, we didn't have all these big name relievers or big name bullpen, and we still got it done. Imagine what we could do with somebody who's actually reliable and not Hansel Robles or Austin Davis. Coming up in our third and final segment of Locked On Red Sox, I will end this show on a positive note because that's what we do around here. But first, this episode is brought to you by betonline.ag. That's right, we're back. We're better than ever. There's a new web interface for the start of the basketball season, which means more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your #1 spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive that 50% welcome bonus. From basketball, football, baseball postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, do not wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. I can confirm that. I'm not much of a bettor, but BetOnline makes it super easy for me. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to Locked On Red Sox podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every day. And I'm going to end this show on a positive note. It is a very simple positive note, and it's that we made it through our first YouTube show together. Thank you so much for your endless support since taking over this show in July. It's been so much fun. Thank you for dealing with the hiatus. Thank you for dealing with the speed bumps trying to get into this podcasting game, figuring it out, and just now this whole video thing. So thank you for continuing to support Locked On Red Sox. Thank you for continuing to support me. I'm not here without you. So thank you. Bear with me. Let me know how I can do better on YouTube. I'm always looking to improve myself and make this show the best for you. But that will do it for today's episode of Locked On Red Sox. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Lauren, 3 Laws, Lauren of 4 R's, handles right there for you. Right there. See, I'm still getting used to it here. You can also find me on the Locked On Red Sox Twitter at LO_Red Sox. Please find all of my work right on NESN.com. Tons of Red Sox stuff, tons of Bruins stuff, tons of Aaron Rodgers stuff. We got you covered from all angles on NESN. And be sure to check out all the other amazing Locked On shows across our network. Locked On Yankees, Locked On A's, Locked On Blue Jays, Locked On Braves. The list goes on. Go check them out. They're so amazing at what they do. And please rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Red Sox podcast. Leave us a review. Get in touch with us. Let us know what we can do more of, less of, what you want to hear. And when you subscribe to Locked On Red Sox, you always know when the episode drops, whether it's 4 a.m., 4 p.m., whenever it drops, you'll always know. Thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every day. Please join me Wednesday as we talk about the potential shortstops that the Red Sox could be interested after a report came out earlier Tuesday. We will talk about if it's a good fit for the Red Sox and what that means for Xander Bogaerts. But now that you've made Locked On Red Sox your first listen, please go make Locked On MLB your second listen of the day with Paul Francis Sullivan, my good friend Sully, friend of the podcast Sully. He brings you his unique perspective of major leagues, both past and present. It's free and available on all platforms. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.